Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic.
The theme for today is the falling leaves.
Yes, here in the Northeast, fall is underway. Leaves are dropping from the trees, changing colors, and we've started to hit frost.
Yep. Now my looking out my back deck door window, which is beautiful. It's like looking at a painting right now. It's just beautiful.
Nice. So today we're going to talk about something that we've discussed this several times before, but I keep running into people that don't quite understand. And I'm talking about networking. And I've spoken to a lot of people, and there's still this group of folks that do not understand what networking is. And they go into it like a sales pitch. And these folks tend to stop going to events because they're not getting any results because networking is not sales. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about what networking is and how to do it both in person, because some in person events are going on, and also virtually, because there are a lot of virtual events going on.
Yeah, and really the best place to start is exactly with what you talked about, what networking is and what networking isn't. Networking is not a sales opportunity initially, but what networking is, my terminology is just the process of developing win-win relationships. And so networking goes far beyond that because relationships drive the world. So when I run my West Hartford Chamber meetings that used to average 70 people live faces, but still average 30 to 40 people virtually every week, we start every week saying, look, people buy when they need or want something. People don't go to networking meetings to go shopping. However, they do go to meet people and develop relationships. So the purpose of a networking meeting is to start developing relationships because they do not happen overnight. And therefore, people who go to networking meetings listing products and services to sell and put people to sleep and don't get anything and quit, that's why that happens. But if they can do their homework, which we'll talk more about that, just identifying what's your value added, who do you need to meet to for your target markets and things like that. All that is really, really important. If you go in there, networking is not only effective, but it's a whole lot of fun and it pays off over and over and over again, far, far, far beyond just sales, because everybody that you network with knows an average of 200 people. And once you develop their trust and their respect, those relationships are potential resources for you for a lot of different things. So I hope you folks are taking notes out there because that's really what it's about. Just remember the word relationships. And how do you like to develop relationships with people?
Yeah, that's so important. When I do networking workshops, we always have a networking event following. And the first question that I ask the audience is, how many of you are here to buy something? And of course, nobody ever raises their hand. So then I point out to them, if nobody is here to buy, why would you come to sell? Networking's not about selling. And while networking can help fill your sales funnel, it's the very beginning of the process. Nobody there is looking to buy, nobody there is looking for what you're selling. They're there to build relationships. They are there so that they know people. And the fact of the matter is, the relationship is so much more important than a buy. And I'll give you an example. Over the past, I would say, 6 weeks, I have had numerous things come up in my personal life, not in business. And each time something came up, I was able to go, I've got a guy who can handle this. I know somebody who does this. In fact, just a few hours ago, my son's computer broke. Well, I happened to have been networking with someone who owns a computer repair business for about 10 years now. So I was able to call them up, drop the computer off. Couple hours later, I got it back fixed. It's about knowing who to call and having those resources. By the same token, I was at a networking event earlier this week, or actually last week, and somebody had asked for a private investigator. Now, this is not something that usually comes up. It's certainly something that's much more rare. But having been networking for over 11 years, I happen to know a private investigator, so I was able to connect them. Now, I'm not getting anything out of that connection. That's just introducing two people. But that's what networking is about, because they're also going to remember that I'm the one that introduced them. So if they know somebody who needs my services, they'll be that much more likely to introduce me to them.
Yeah, basically, what you are getting out of that is you're getting to be known as a resource to go to when people need things, and basically, that promotes your own credibility with a capital C. So it's just so important to do that. That's what relationships are all about. You can call people for any reason whatsoever, and I mean, it's nice going on to Google to look things up as far as getting information about things, but it's always nice getting validation from somebody that you know and trust. So, getting back to going to a networking meeting, your purpose in the networking meeting, you mentioned people not going there to buy and so on and so forth. What people are interested in networking meetings is developing relationships, which means they're interested in you personally. And so, what your commercial needs to have is something that gets people want to these days set up a Zoom appointment with you to get to know you better. It used to be to meet for coffee, but you want to get somebody interested enough to want to start developing that relationship with you. So you have to put something personable in there. Talk about your value added, how you make people feel comfortable or solve problems, because that's what people are looking for. And other interesting things about yourself, and that's basically it. And it's always nice to close that out saying, look, I'm looking to Zoom with you or whoever. And if you do have a specific ask, which is very, very important, um, make sure you put that in your commercial too. A lot of times people will go to chamber meetings and this and that. One of my tips is if you're going to be going to a Zoom meeting, a networking meeting for a chamber of commerce, go into their directory of members and identify a couple of members that you would like to meet and ask for them specifically by name in your commercial, because chances are somebody at that Zoom meeting might know somebody there. And just say, if you do, let's Zoom so I can see how I can help you out too. It's not just asking for yourself. So again, the more creative you get and the more you do your homework and be specific with what you're looking to do and make sure you're following up by having appointments with people, that's how the whole thing works.
Right. I want to talk a little bit more about what you said about asking for a specific person, because I do things a little differently. And the reason I do them differently is because of my existing network. I've been running networking events for 11 years. I've been attending other people's networking events for 11 years. Been a member of numerous chambers. What I have found is, a lot of folks at networking events, they want you to ask for somebody specific by name. The problem that I have is that if I know somebody's name, I've already got a connection to get to them. So what I'm looking for is a type, a specific position, something that I don't know. And that's another part of networking, is bringing your knowledge to those that don't have it. So you may be looking for, say, bank managers. Now, I can't even name all of the banks in the areas. There's a bunch of them that I don't know about. But if I tell somebody that I'm looking for branch managers at banks, they can tell me, oh, well, there's this bank over here, and I know such and such over there. That's also, I mean, it's not as specific as asking for a name, but it's a good way to learn about what you don't know. Now, that bank manager may never become a client of mine, but if I can get that connection, I can have a Zoom meeting with them and learn more about their business. And then I have clients all over Most of them at one point or another need to connect to banks, either for a banking account or for a small business loan. And it's so much better if I can connect them with a person than just going, oh, well, XYZ Bank is pretty good. Why don't you try over there? So there's more to it than just asking for specific people. You also want to know what that position is and why you're connecting to that person. Because it's not always about making a sale.
Yeah, I almost should have had you go first on this one, because basically what I usually do preface that is go in and take a look at your target customer and take a look at the position, just like you're talking about, the type of person that you're looking to meet in there, and then follow that up with such as this person at this bank who actually fills that position. So I kind of did it backwards, but that's exactly the way to go, rather than just go onto a website and just pick out names. That's like stabbing in the dark, cold calling too.
Yeah, and that's something that's very important, is that a big part of networking is so you don't cold call. You want to build relationships, and more important, you want to build trusted relationships, so that when somebody introduces you, the person that you're being introduced to will trust you because they have a trusted relationship with the person that's introducing you. So it's works both ways. It's a trusted relationship on both sides. This way, oh, this has got to be a very good person because I trust the person that's introducing them, and they feel the same way about you. Now, when you have a Zoom call or a phone call, however you want to connect for the first time, it's not cold. You already know a little bit about them. You know they're trustworthy because you've put your trust in the person that's referring, and it helps build the relationship that much faster. And networking really is, like, I think the best example I can think of is an old shampoo commercial where a woman was introduced to this shampoo, and she told two friends, and they told two friends, and so on and so on. And that's how networking works. You may never do business with the person that's in the room with you, but they'll tell two friends about you, and then they'll tell two friends about you, and one of those may do business with you, or possibly a few steps beyond that. I've actually gotten clients who were, six introduced to me like 6 steps from the first person I met at the networking event.
Yeah, the 6 degrees of separation. And again, we talked about, if there's 60 people in the room, there's not 60 potential one-time sales, but 60 times 200 is 12,000 potential resources, if I got my math right there, just by developing those relationships. And again, is what you're saying. It's who knows who knows who knows who, and that's what it's about. So that's why it is so important. I mean, you talked about trusting people. If somebody asks for somebody, even a really, really good commercial at a networking meeting, and you don't know that person yet, it's very, very important to set up that Zoom conference with that person to start to get to know them and develop the trust. And that way, when you do, if you have a Zoom meeting with somebody that you are getting to know and trust, and you want to commit to each other to help each other out, that's when you can make the phone call for that person and actually set them up with the person you want to refer them to, saying, please expect this person's phone call as a personal friend of mine who I trust. And that's networking on steroids. And that doesn't happen at the first meeting, but the more you get to know people, the more that does happen. So that's what the goal is. Networking, consider this business development time, because what you're doing is you're actually developing a quote unquote sales force or strategic partnerships, whatever you want to call it, of people who are going to be constantly looking out for you. The more that they know you, the more that you're front of mind. That's how powerful it really is.
Right. And you hit on two very important words there: strategic partnerships. You're not necessarily asking for somebody who you're going to do business with. I know a number of realtors who, when they network, they're not asking for people who are selling their homes. They're asking to be connected to divorce attorneys. Why? Because generally when there's a divorce, if they had a house, that house is being sold and the profits are being split between the couple. So a divorce attorney is going to be able to refer many people to them rather than just looking for one client at a time. So you want to connect with good referral sources. And again, just because you're connected doesn't mean they're going to throw you business. You have to have a relationship with them and build trust.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Basically, who those strategic partners are. In B&I, they call it contact spheres. But what you're looking to do is network with people who are not in your industry necessarily, but have the same customer base that you are looking for. And those are the people, you talked about realtors. They're going to be looking for divorce attorneys. They're going to be looking for landscapers. They're going to be looking for insurance people, everybody who deals with people who are eventually in the market for housing. And the more that you can develop into your contact sphere, the better off you're going to be. And these days, it's really, I think it's easier to actually develop call them strategic partnerships where you have a few different people that you know. And if you get together in an organized basis, say to form a strategic partnership or a mastermind group or whatever, for the purpose of helping each other out, um, that's even more powerful. And these days, one of the biggest advantages of virtual networking versus the old person to person is logistics, because there's no more driving, there's no more walls as far as where you can go, there's no more local markets and whatever. And if again you do your homework and identify what you're looking to do and who you want to do it with, and you work it through virtual networking, you have a whole world of opportunity open for you now that was never open before. And you and I are really specific examples of that, because when this shut down, I mean, you've always been more into virtual and that kind of thing than me, but me being a physical speaker, trainer, consultant, I thought everything was done. And even though I had a Zoom account for a long time, which I never used, I didn't really realize what I had there until within a week we had an executive committee for the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, our first Zoom networking meeting, and did some breakout groups and so on and so forth. And I said, wow, this is even more powerful than face to face, because I can do a whole lot more with it. So it's just amazing with what's going on. So again, do your homework and work the relationship system, and you really have a whole world of potential out there for you, even in these times.
Absolutely. I mean, so many people are on Zoom right now. But that also gives you a big opportunity because, yes, you're going to a networking event with a whole lot of people. You may have 30 or 40 people on your screen, but you've also got a chat box that you can target a message to a specific person, which is not always possible in person because, let's face it, everybody's talking. It's very difficult to make that connection. And it's also a lot easier to connect with folks because you don't have to worry about the travel. So you're not finding a middle ground for both people to travel to and then spending time driving there, having the meeting and driving back. I've had days where I've had 6, 7 meetings back to back. I could never do that unless everybody was in a central location. Now, these people can be anywhere and I can just go from one Zoom call to the next.
Yeah, it's amazing. Speaking about chat rooms, for those of you who don't use Zoom, basically it's a place where you can put comments, information, and so on and so forth while the meeting is going on. A lot of times people they type randomly in chat while they're listening to commercials and so on. Uh, a real effective way to do this for you as a follow-up is when you're doing your commercial, tell them you're going to put your information in the chat box. And what I recommend doing is having that information written down in a Word document where you can just copy and paste it into the chat box where you don't have to type it. And included in that information can be a special offer that you might have going on, or a reference to a URL that you want people to look at. You can put a whole lot more in that than just name and number. So if you make that preparation part of your commercial where you put a really, really focused follow up into the chat box where you tell people it's going to be there, That's a great tool that you have right now that obviously people aren't writing frantically when you're doing your commercials in person at a networking meeting.
All right. And, we talk a lot about Zoom because that's the most common piece of software that people are using. But obviously, most chat programs have the same capabilities, Zoom, WebEx. So the type of software you're using doesn't matter. What's important, though, is that no matter what you're doing, there is now software that can duplicate what you do in person online. I was just introduced to some software when we do workshops. People toss out ideas, we write them down on a post it note, we stick the post it note up on the whiteboard. There's software that you can actually just provide a link to, and the people at the meeting can click on the link. You share the screen via Zoom, but they can put their ideas in a post-it and put the post-it up on the screen. So don't be afraid of doing things virtually. You can get the same benefits that you get in person from these virtual tools. And I know there's a learning curve, obviously, but once you're comfortable with it, you can jump right in and build those relationships, even though you may not be able to get to them face to face.
Yeah, and actually, one of the fun things about being technologically, I'm even speaking challenged here, but technologically challenged, is you can actually have fun with this as we're all learning Zoom together. I mean, you do things like breakout rooms and muting people and so on and so forth. And one of the best ways to develop relationships is to show your personality. And people like people who are fun or maybe a little bit self-deprecating and have fun with their own faults and so on. And that happens all the time in Zoom as people are learning these things. So uh, have fun with it and realize that it's not going to be perfect. Obviously, if you're going to do a presentation and you want to fine tune it, then just like a regular presentation, you have to make sure that everything is done so that it comes out the way you want it to come out. But when you're working meetings and so on and so forth, have fun. And people are going to understand that.
Right. You mentioned working on presentations. Well, the one thing that networking does have in common with doing a presentation is it works best if you practice, practice, practice. Most times you have a chance to introduce yourself. You need to keep that relatively short. Practice what you want to say. You can do it to your webcam and give yourself a recording so that you can play it back and see how it sounds. But know what you're going to say, know who you're looking for, and practice your presentation. There are so many people that are introverted. They get nervous in front of a camera, even a webcam. They get nervous at networking events. They don't want to put themselves out there. But the more you practice, the easier it becomes. The first networking event I ever went to, I didn't know I was going to have to introduce myself to everybody in a 30-second commercial. And as it was getting closer and closer to my turn, I'm getting more and more nervous. Now I'm doing it for 11 years. I don't even think about it. It's become second nature. Why? Because I've done it over and over and over again. And it's very important to do that. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can do, I'm going a little bit beyond networking here, but we're talking about presentations right now. This new modern technology is an opportunity for really anybody to do a presentation um, to get themselves out there. And again, you do have to make sure that it's fine-tuned and perfect. But one of the things that you can actually do is your own PowerPoint presentation where you're not talking to people anymore. You just have your PowerPoint on the screen and you have your scripted presentation right in front of you and go through it that way. That's a great way to start out, starting simple and going through a PowerPoint presentation. And then, eventually you can put your face back on there. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. And with the technology that's out there, including putting your own promos on YouTube and sending people there, everybody has the ability to get a YouTube channel or a Vimeo channel where you can actually put your things there. There's a whole lot of different ways to leverage what we have available to us in technology. And by being able to record yourself, just as you said, if you're prepared and do a great job, uh, it's going to help you out a lot.
Absolutely. And then, we need to get a little past the initial networking meeting. You want to connect, and has to go beyond having one coffee date or one Zoom meeting. Connect to people on social media. Facebook, LinkedIn are the biggest ones for networkers. But connect to people so that you get to know them better. I just had a meeting with someone that I've been going to a networking event with, but I actually met her 2.5 years ago at a different networking event. I didn't make the connection, and she wasn't sure that I was the same person because she doesn't use social media, so we hadn't been connected. But her business partner does use social media. I was connected to her. So as soon as she mentioned her business partner, everything clicked into place for us. You need to stay top of mind. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to be connected on social media. This way, when they post something, you see it comes up. You get to know them better. For a lot of people, it's a fantastic thing to connect personally. I remember we had somebody attend one of the networking events I was running, and we were talking. Then they were gone for about 4 or 5 months. And then when they came back, I was, well, the last time you were here, your wife was pregnant. She must have given birth by now. Was it a boy or a girl? The fact that I remembered that his wife was pregnant blew him away and immediately created a better connection for us. So listen to personal details and follow up with folks. Even if it's just when Facebook tells you, oh, it's such and such's birthday today, wish them a happy birthday and stay connected that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Networking 101, if you're talking about relationships, the easiest way to get somebody interested in knowing and liking you is to ask them a question, just honestly listen to them and put things in your database like, you talk about the pregnancy or whatever, but ask questions to engage people. And you're right. If you follow up later on saying, how's it going with this and that, they realize that you're interested in them as a person and not trying to sell your products and services. And people can see right through you when you are trying to do that. Obviously, if you're in person, you know it right away when people are just stuffing business cards in your faces. But you can get that sense through a phone call or a Zoom meeting also. So it's really, really important to ask questions, listen, really engage with the person. Again, the purpose is to develop a win-win relationship, and that's all about getting to know people and all the great things about them. So show interest,
Right.
listen.
And never make assumptions. Just because you think the person in front of you may not be a good connection for you doesn't make it so. I've got two situations that actually brought that home for me. One was years and years ago. I was a vendor at uh, uh, basically it was a pop culture convention, and there was this little kid who was looking at some of the collectibles we had. Obviously, they were way more expensive than what he could afford. But he kept coming back and looking and looking. At the end of the show, I cut the price to something he could afford, cut my profit, just, figured it'd be a good thing. He obviously wanted this really badly. Well, his father came over afterwards, after he bought it, thanked me for, letting him buy it. His father went on to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on merchandise over the next few times that he saw me. Now, I had no idea that was going to happen. By the same token, I met somebody about a year and a half ago who actually already uses software that I sell. So now, obviously, he's not going to be a customer of mine, because he's already bought the software. But he's such a big fan of the software and he doesn't have a relationship with the vendor he got it from. So he connected with me. We've been talking. Now he's been referring people to buy the software to me rather than the vendor that he bought it from because we built a relationship. So it really is so important to have that relationship. Now we're just about at the end of our time. So Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for today?
Now, number one, networking relationships. Just think about that. It's the ongoing process of developing win-win relationships. And once you do that, you have unlimited potential in so many different areas. And these days, if you can just imagine the different ways where you can use this to develop relationships and do your homework and figure that out, the sky's the limit with what you can accomplish. Just go out there and develop these knowing, trusting relationships. It begins with listening.
Absolutely. I think for me, the big thing to remember is that it's always about a relationship, not a sale. And while you may get sales out of these relationships, it's not the primary driver, and it's also a long-term process. It's not going to happen overnight because you have to build trust, and that doesn't happen immediately. So go out there, meet people, and build those relationships. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.